everybody, and welcome to February, which is National Heart Health Awareness Month. I'm actually in you can't see it, I don't know if it reads well on screen, but I'm in a heart patterned shirt because I'm committing to the role. So we're going to talk specifically today about cholesterol and the role cholesterol plays in your body and in relationship to your heart health. As a reminder, this is being recorded. You can use the chat box at any time. I'm going to hop on and pay attention to anyone who might be chiming in with questions or comments, but we also have at the end of our presentation a formal Q&A. So if you want to hold your questions until then, that's fine too. Always disclaiming that while I am a dietitian, I'm not your dietitian. So please make sure that you do get proper medical advice before you start any treatment or you make any changes to your current regimens, medications, etc. And make sure that you're getting clearance if you do try to engage in any kind of physical activity. We don't want you getting hurt out there. Just to reintroduce myself, if you are new to these webinars, my name is Dina D'Alessandro. I hold a Master of Science in Nutrition. I am a registered dietitian. I'm also an adjunct professor and the campus nutritionist up at Lehman College in the Bronx, one of the CUNY schools. I also run a virtual platform called Dish with Dina, where you can find me talking about a lot of things like this as well. And I've also been trained in a Prevent Type 2 Diabetes program through the CDC. Been featured in some things nationally and locally. And I also really love working with a lot of my future colleagues in the nutrition students space, dietetic interns, and I also help mentor and coach newly credentialed dietitians. So I'm always really happy to talk to you, the community, and get feedback on what it is that we're learning together. And what I share hopefully is informational and beneficial to you. So thank you again for coming. Good morning. So we're going to talk about what is cholesterol. Cholesterol gets a bad rap, I got to tell you, but it's actually pretty good. It's a good thing. Your body is using it as a form of functional processes for some cellular things, and I'll explain that in a second. But you might know it as kind of like a waxy substance. It is part of what is known as the fat family, or sometimes we call this the lipids. These are macronutrients, molecules that exist in our body when we eat, when we ingest. But this is technically what's known as a non-essential nutrient because our body has the ability to make and produce cholesterol. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second too. However, it is also found in animal products because if we do eat things with cholesterol, depending on what our body is already making, that could affect the amount of cholesterol that we have in our system. So if you're not making enough, it's good to get some from animal products. If you are making enough, then anything that you're getting from food that you're ingesting would just be added into what you already have. So the functions of what cholesterol does, it's what's known as a sterol. So this might be words that you're hearing out there in the world. This builds cells. It also helps with, remember we talked last month with thyroid health, we talked about hormones and the role that hormones play in a lot of our cellular functions. So it helps with building those hormones. It helps with us also getting what we need from vitamin D, which is also a very important nutrient. There are again, you might have heard this term before, what are known as lipoproteins or lipoproteins. These transport cholesterol throughout our blood system, our blood stream. So we have the low densities. These are known as your LDLs, or what are known as like the lousy or the bad cholesterol. This is transporting those cholesterol molecules to our body, and not in the great way. They're kind of building up in that sense. And then we have the high density lipoproteins, HDL. These are known as the happy, right? H for happy, L for lousy, or the good cholesterol that transports that extra cholesterol away from our body. So it excretes it. So when you have, and I'll show you in a second too about blood tests and what you're looking for when you go to the doctor, when you have a high amount of the LDLs, when you have a high amount of that bad cholesterol and a low amount of that good cholesterol, it really doesn't do well with trying to remove some of that extra cholesterol in your system. So that's the goal. The goal is to make sure that we lessen that lousy or that bad cholesterol and increase the HDL or the good cholesterol in our body. The role that it plays in heart health here is that if we ingest certain foods that are high in what are known as saturated fats, those are things that are just like oils that are solid at room temperature, like fat and lard and different kinds of animal products that have a fat to them, right? So we usually ask you to choose a lean version of something or strip away that fat from the meat. Then your liver ends up producing more cholesterol, so it's adding on to what it already exists, and that cholesterol level can increase to unhealthy levels, whereby, again, some words I'm teaching you here, if you remember from last month's discussion, hyper, elevated or high levels of lipidemia, which is cholesterol or fats floating around in your blood system, or another term can also be hypercholesteremia. Your girl here, dietitian or not, I'm still a human person. I actually have hypercholesteremia, which is a familial thing. This is genetics. I'm predisposed. Unfortunately, one of the traits I've gotten from my parents is that my liver makes cholesterol at a high level. And so in my case, I really do have to be careful of how much extra cholesterol I'm getting and managing cholesterol that is already in my body. Some other risk factors, age, right? We're all getting older every day. We are in certain decades of our lives. We've talked about this as well in the last couple of webinars too, that sometimes it's just the name of the game. The older we get, things wear and tear. And also because we might be more prone to having multiple conditions happen at the same time as we get older, or taking multiple forms of medication that can put a little bit of stress factors on our system. And also on the right-hand side, right, I'm always going to champion for making sure you quit smoking. So smoke issues, sleep habits, and stress also play a very big role in heart health. Some of the common conditions that you might hear of, come across, or maybe you were told you were at risk for or have been diagnosed with are listed here. Again, take into account, right, the hormones and how our body functions with that. And then you throw in the cholesterol issue and it becomes a more prominent issue when it's related to your heart condition. So you have coronary heart disease, stroke, which is something where one of those little fatty plaques that are embedded in your arteries can pop off and go to your brain. There could be a blockage there. Peripheral vascular disease. This has issues with your extremities. Type 2 diabetes, right? We often think of that as something more related to carbohydrates or sugar intake, but there is a correlation with cholesterol as well because it's all tied in, right? The hormones that affect your heart also control your blood sugar. Kidney disease, polycystic ovary syndrome, that is something that happens in females where there is a dysregulation of insulin and other issues that can cause some reproductive issues. And then hypothyroidism, which we learned about last month, when your thyroid gland is not making enough of the thyroid hormone. And that also affects heart stuff and muscle stuff and digestive issues as well. So your body is a system, right? All of these things play a role. And together they meet up and hopefully help you have a healthy life, or you can manage whatever conditions you're going through. So let's talk a little bit here about what to look for. A lot of this is going to be standard blood tests through your physical exam. So you're making sure you're going to the doctor every year to get your annual checkup. And this is what you're looking at. The blood lipid panel, or your cholesterol levels. You can see from bottom to top how it goes from lower numbers to higher numbers, where you are considered more in that healthy range, striving for that, whether it's through food modifications or medicines. We'll talk about that in a second. At risk, so that borderline yellow area, if those are the numbers that you're seeing on your blood lipid panels, then that's something you want to discuss with your doctor, obviously, to make sure you are addressing things before the condition progresses to something worse. And then the higher levels here of a total cholesterol number of 240 or higher. And again, that LDL and HDL, right? We're really talking these days about a ratio of those two things. So even though you might have a cholesterol level that is 240 or higher, just as a side note, I'll share with you, because I just said I have issues. I think the highest I've ever clocked in at was 282. But my LDLs and my HDLs, as far as the ratio goes, is a lot more on the healthier side. So for whatever reason, the total cholesterol number is higher, again, because of that that genetic predisposition I have with my liver making cholesterol. But my LDL and HDLs are kind of okay. So again, I make sure I go and check in. For me, it's a little bit more like every 6 months just to keep that on track. We also have something called triglycerides. So if you are looking at your blood panel, these might come across as TG, triglycerides. That's part of your total cholesterol family. But interestingly enough, even though it is still another type of a fat or a lipid, it can also be related to carbohydrates. So if you are eating an excess amount of grain-based foods or starchy products, or if you are consuming alcohol on more than a moderate basis, like a high level of alcohol, your body is taking all of those unused calories, right? Because we're trying to make sure that we are working as a highly functioned mechanism, but sometimes we eat more than we're burning off. We're not moving around a lot. We might be a little bit more sedentary. And so those extra calories can deposit as parts of our body. They can deposit as like fat cells, and that fat cell is related to cholesterol. So it actually can convert into increasing your overall cholesterol levels. So it's also, I said before, with smoke and sleep and stress, a lot of the influences we have here are related to lifestyle habits as well. So in triglycerides land, if you happen to look at your blood screening, your blood lipid panel, again, you have that total cholesterol, you have those LDL and HDL numbers with the ratio there that tells you whether or not you are at risk for some heart issues or conditions. And then your triglyceride levels here too, from bottom to top. Anything less than 150, you should be okay. That borderline section between 150 to 199, that's maybe putting you a little bit more at risk. And if your triglycerides come in at more than 200, then that would be something to obviously, discuss with your doctor. Diana, I see your question in here, and I gotta be honest, and this could be a whole other discussion. We could have a whole topic about alcohol. So Diana's question is, how much alcohol is too much alcohol? Okay, so the general rule of thumb is a serving is about a 4-ounce glass of wine, 1 beer, or an ounce of like what's a shot glass, like a jigger of alcohol, like liquor. So that is considered a 1 serving, and a moderate amount would be 1 serving of those every day. Okay, so you can have like a shot, you can have a glass of wine, or you can have a beer, every day, and that would be considered a moderate amount of alcohol according to our US government. However, globally speaking, not to sidetrack, but I want to answer Diana's question here. Globally speaking, we have seen a ton of research where even a little bit of alcohol could increase your risk factors for cancer. It is by nature, it is a carcinogen because it is a fermented food, and the way that they produce alcohol makes it a carcinogen. So, how much is too much? How many cigarettes are too many? How many of anything is too many? It's really going to depend on your own risk factors, where you see yourself. Like, can I live without alcohol? I've been alcohol free since I was 22, and I just turned 55 on Saturday. So I'm okay without it. But some people enjoy a drink. So I would just say, please be mindful of what it is that you're doing. And also don't use it as a substitute for a meal. So don't say, I'm not going to have any dinner tonight because I'm going out drinking with my friends. Like, make sure that you're having it in moderation. So I hope that answers your question, Diana. And thank you for that. Okay, so next up here, treatments. I just mentioned before, lifestyle modifications. So I'll talk a little bit more about that too. But when you think of lifestyle modifications, what comes to mind? If you want to answer that in the chat, you can, or discuss amongst yourselves. What are things in your lifestyle habits that you can modify that you think could make you healthier or reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease? What comes to mind with that? We have things like diet, right? Whatever you're ingesting, and that includes now drinking as well, whatever you're eating or drinking. It includes things like your physical activity. There we go. Thank you, Diana. Right. So food modifications, taking in a little bit of less everything, just being portion appropriate or mindful of your food. Moving as much as you can when you can, if possible. Also reducing any other issues like we mentioned, smoking. I shared last month, I used to be a smoker for 23 years. I stopped doing that 12 years ago. Huge change in everything. And then sleep habits, stress management, self-care. If you were with me during, I think, our December's webinar, we did the SMART goal setup. We talked about setting up some goals. So at the end of this webinar, you can think of some other things that you might want to do as far as lifestyle modifications to help you reduce your risk of getting into that heart health issue. I have some notes here on the side because I always forget the names of these things, but medications could play a role too, right? This is where you would have conversations with your doctor. If you are borderline triglycerides, cholesterol issues, anything that is already a risk factor for you, your doctor might have a discussion with you about medications. And it could be long-term or it could be short-term. So these are usually known as statins. You might hear of something called Lipitor or Crestor, atorvastatin, fluvastatin. They're all going to have statin at the end of it. And what they do is they block that process of your liver making cholesterol, and they block anything that you happen to eat that has cholesterol in it from making an excess. There's definitely side effects to this as much as there are side effects to any medications. So please make sure you discuss that. You have some sort of understanding or consent when you take medications, because long-term side effects, all medications are going to be processed and what's known as metabolized through either our liver or our kidney. So when you are on a wide variety of medicines or a long-term period of medications, you are putting your kidney and or liver at risk, and then you could potentially end up with liver or kidney damage or disease down the line. So make sure you discuss with your doctor any side effects. It's possible they'll put you on it while you're kind of figuring out some lifestyle changes, and then maybe they'll take you off or reduce your risk, reduce your dosage on there. Give me one sec. Let me check the Q&A. I think I just lost my little, there we go. Let me see the Q&A. Yeah, Susan, inhibitors is just a fancy term for what they do. So it inhibits or it blocks the process of that cholesterol, how it's forming. So it stops that from happening. The issue that some people find is, when you're not absorbing something, when cholesterol, in this case, when cholesterol is kind of being blocked from happening, you could have some digestive issues. You might go to the bathroom a little bit more often. It could either constipate you or give you, gastrointestinal issues. And so, Diana, again, that would be something about taking statins every day. That would be something that would be discussed with the doctor. So my understanding is my boyfriend's actually on statins right now. It is a daily thing. So like 7 o'clock every night, he takes his dose. But again, that would be discussed with your doctor. They would have a start and end time, a particular dosage that they give you, and they would determine whether it's once a day, twice a day, once a week. I'm not exactly sure of, the types of medications, of how they release in that sense. If there's like a long extended release where you take it once and it lasts a couple of days or a week, or they might put you on a daily medication. That would be something that you would have to discuss with your doctor for the dosage. All right, let's talk about sources of cholesterol. I just said to you, your body makes it. If you don't know what that thing is on the left-hand side, that is your liver, my friends. That is located on the right-hand side of your body, kind of right underneath your rib cage and up above your lower gastrointestinal issue area down in your body. So that is your liver. Your liver makes cholesterol for you. On the right-hand side are all of the other sources of cholesterol. I mentioned different kinds of foods. And so here, what I want to share with you, right? You have a variety of different things, some like wholer type of foods, minimally processed foods like milk, coming straight out of a cow. It's going to go through some processing to pasteurize that. Yogurt is a form of a processed food because it's made, dairy farmers will create the milk and then they'll send it off to the yogurt processing plant. Your meat, whether you're getting a whole chicken, a piece of fish, a piece of steak, etc. Again, all of the animal products are going to contain cholesterol. However, the stuff that's on the top here is what's known as dietary cholesterol. We found through research, our understanding is dietary cholesterol, so cholesterol that comes from more wholer type of products or minimally processed things that you can kind of still see in their sort of natural state, are less problematic. So, eggs used to get a bad rap in the day too, right? But now we're like, you know what? You can eat a couple of eggs every so often, every other day or so. What we really want you to be mindful of is how much of the other stuff, the cholesterol that is found in some of the more highly processed foods, like sad news, right? Cakes and pastries and all the fun things. And on the right-hand side there, aside from the cheese and the olives, we see things like a charcuterie platter, right? So these are like your cured or processed meats, your deli meats. Those things are going to be higher in saturated fats just by the way that they are processed. And that would be something to just be mindful of. So I would rather you include a moderate amount of the wholer natural type of dietary cholesterol foods than overdo it with some of the stuff that's listed on the bottom. Susan, it's yes, sort of. So it depends on the manufacturer, the make. So the question is, are I guess the statins different than inhibitors? They could be. They're just different names of things. So you'll see that a lot of times. Like sometimes I mentioned certain medications are metabolized through your liver and certain medications are metabolized through your kidney. So your doctor might recommend one over the other. So it's just kind of like a family of whatever that medication is. I'm not a pharmacist, by the way, just disclaiming that. Just I don't know a ton about the medication world, but that is my understanding, that they're just given different names. They both block the cholesterol process in your body. So they might be given different names, but they kind of do the same things when they inhibit something from happening. All right, pop quiz. I just got talking a lot about cholesterol and foods and sources. Which, if you want to add in the chat, which do you think has more cholesterol? Gram for gram, serving for serving, an egg or an avocado, right? We've talked about fat content in certain foods. Which do you think has more cholesterol? An avocado or an egg? I'll give you a second to think about that. If you want to put it in the chat, you can weigh in. Naomi says an egg. Anyone else want to chime in? What do you think has? Mr. Moore says egg. Yes, this is a trick question. I do this to my students all the time and they remember it for semesters to come. It's a trick question. I just said only animal products have cholesterol. You have fat content in things like avocado, but it's actually the good type of fat. It's an unsaturated fat. It's the healthy kind of fat. It actually helps lower your cholesterol and it helps support overall heart health when you take things in like avocado and nuts, etc. So yes, an egg is going to have more cholesterol than an avocado. Good job, everyone. Let's talk about the role of fiber. When we talk about fibrous foods, we talk about things that are found mostly in or usually in the plant world. So these are your produce items. From serving to serving, I'll share with you a little bit about the content of fiber in different kinds of foods. But if you think of fibrous foods, you might think of like leafy greens, anything like beans, legumes, chickpeas, that sort of thing. Those are all really good fibrous foods. So they're found in the plant cells, the walls of the plant cells. They actually absorb the water in your body and they kind of like a sponge, they kind of scrub through and they form a little bit of like a jelly-ish type of mass that can clear out the cholesterol, can help move that cholesterol out of your system. So that is what the role of fiber does. If you've been fiber deficient, if you also maybe have some gastrointestinal issues that you're like, fiber makes me a little bloated, uncomfortable. The rule of thumb here is as you increase your fiber intake, as you add more things with fiber in it, make sure you're adding it slowly. So don't all of a sudden be like, let me just drink, a giant bottle of Metamucil or pop all my fiber supplements or start eating 2 cans of beans a day, because my friends, you're going to have some tummy trouble. So you add in your fiber slowly. And when you add fiber, you also add fluid, whether that's extra water, extra tea, extra soup that has water in it, because that helps with flushing out the mechanisms that are going on there so it doesn't give you too many tummy problems. All right, I'm going to share with you here how to look at a nutrition facts label. So any food item that has a label on it is technically a processed food. It's been packaged by a manufacturer. And we have some guidelines here. On the slide, this is kind of like your daily recommendations. Again, the government kind of establishes this based on research, and we come to see that ideally you want to take in less than 20 grams of saturated fat on a daily basis. So if you happen to have a calculator and feel like tracking all this every day, go nuts, but I'm going to give you some guidelines. I don't really recommend to obsess over these things, but just be mindful of what you're eating over the course of a day. Anything that contains cholesterol, we usually encourage less than 300 milligrams a day of that. With fiber, we actually want you to add in fiber. As a general policy, I think most of America doesn't get enough. So we say about 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. Could be a little hard to reach that if you're not diversifying your diet, if you don't have a lot of things that you have to eat, and decreasing your added sugars. So less than 30 grams of added sugars a day. So I'm going to share with you on screen here what you're looking for because we do have a new version that came out a couple of years ago. This is a new version of the nutrition facts label. It used to look a little different. Like they bolded some things, they moved some things around, and based on research findings, we also have come to learn of some things that aren't necessarily that important anymore, like certain vitamins and minerals that we used to be deficient in, we're okay with now. So the first thing, right, I'm going to have you kind of stare at the screen, and can you see where, it's a little bit hard to see, but can you see where the saturated fat and cholesterol is listed on this label? Can you see where it is? If you can point it out, if you kind of are staring at it, is it top, middle, bottom? Can you take a look and see if you can find that? And I'm going to show you right there, right? So this particular fictitious item, whatever this food item is, it has 230 calories per serving of whatever this food item is. It only has 1 gram of saturated fat, so that's good. It's low in saturated fat. And it actually has 0 milligrams of cholesterol. So bonus, there's no cholesterol in this thing. So that makes me think it's probably a plant-based food. It might actually be, I'm going to venture to say maybe oatmeal, maybe like a packet of oatmeal or something. All right, let's take a look. Can you find on this label where fiber is listed? Can you see where the fiber is listed? Top, middle, or bottom? And then I'll advance the slide. And it's kind of in that middle there. Fiber is actually part of the carbohydrate family, but it doesn't get used like carbohydrates does. Carbohydrates as a food item, you can eat it and it gives you energy. Fiber, like I just said, it moves through your body. It's not digestible. So it'll come out the other end and it'll do some, has a little job to do on its way out. And then here we have added sugars. Can you see where the added sugars are? And this is something new to the new version of the nutrition facts label. They added this in. This used to not exist in the older versions. And now we have added sugars are actually separated out. And just as a side note here, what you're really looking at, again, carbohydrates, I might do a macronutrient topic webinar one day so we can kind of walk through what all of this means. But carbohydrates is your family of molecules that create a good immediate source of energy that can be found in things like grains and beans and all your plant-based foods. And within that, you'll also have some fiber, like you just saw here. You'll also have some sugar. So sometimes things have sugar, like a banana has sugar. That's a naturally occurring sugar. It's going to be listed on your food label here as 12 grams. That is naturally occurring. But what we want to decrease or limit or maybe avoid in some cases, especially if you're dealing with some blood sugar conditions like diabetes, the added sugars. That's what the manufacturer is putting in as table sugar. So right here is 10 grams of table sugar. And we mentioned before, we want less than a certain amount over the course of the day. So we want to be mindful of how much this is adding up. So, okay, fine. Whatever this is, maybe, even if you have like a fruit on the bottom yogurt, right? That has added, it's got a syrup. It's not just plain blueberries in there. They're adding some sort of compote to it. So there's going to be some syrup or added sugar in it. All right, whatever, not a big deal. But if you see yourself eating sugary containing foods throughout the course of the day, again, like we did for, I think, last webinar, you can maybe purchase something without that and then doctor it up at home if you feel like you need to sweeten it up a little bit, if you have the ability to do that. All right, so here's what I wanted to share with you. If you find a food that has no labels on it, if you're buying dried bulk produce, whatever it is that might not have a label. I think even eggs, I can't remember. I could be wrong about that, but sometimes I think the carton of eggs may or may not have a label on them. So if you find something that doesn't have a label, Google is your best friend. You can always check that out. So on the left-hand side, I have the categories of what we just talked about. How much saturated fat and or cholesterol is in the foods that are on the top, and I've given you some comparisons there. So I'll just read that off. So we mentioned before, avocado does have a little bit of saturated fat in it. It's mostly unsaturated fat, the healthy fat, but it has no cholesterol. Where in comparison to, these are supposed to be beef patties or a burger, that's per patty, that's 12 milligrams of saturated fat. That's a little bit on the higher side. Again, we saw the example I gave with the label. We had 1 gram of saturated fat. This is 12. That should be gram, not milligram. And 78 milligrams of cholesterol. So we said over the course of an entire day, we don't want you eating more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol. So right there, that's about, about a third of, or a little bit less than a third of what you should take in the day. And then your egg has 2 milligrams of saturated fat and 187 milligrams of cholesterol. Now, fun fact, maybe fun fact, an egg, almost all of the protein of the egg is contained in the egg white, and all of the fat and cholesterol is contained in the yolk. So someone like me who has to be mindful of my cholesterol intake, even if it comes from whole foods, what I usually do is I'll crack a whole egg and then I'll have a container of egg whites and I'll use that as my omelet base or scrambled eggs. If you completely cut out all of the egg yolks, you're really denying yourself of flavor for sure, but also there are some very good um, vitamins and minerals in the yellow, but I can see if you're trying to be conscientious of your cholesterol intake, you might want to just do egg whites. So at least you get the protein, but you're not getting the fat or the cholesterol. Um, Okay, anonymous attendee has in the Q&A, are 10 grams of natural sugar the same as 10 grams of added sugar? That is a fantastic question. And I would say, according to your body, it probably doesn't know the difference. It's breaking down the molecules regardless of how they're showing up, whether it's a natural or an added sugar. However, what we've come to see is the added sugars, just like with the cholesterol, if it's a more natural type of item, it's less likely to put you more at risk for some sort of chronic condition later on. So even though your body's like, oh, this is a molecule and I'm just breaking it down, I'm just putting this over here and putting this over there, it doesn't necessarily recognize it in the chemical structure, but in the health field, in the health world, it does. It recognizes added sugars can put you more at risk. So here, and again, I might ask you to have blueberries or an apple versus an apple pie, but of course, you know me, I think enough right now. We've been together for a couple of months. I'm not going to discourage you from having a piece of apple pie. So again, it's just kind of regulation, moderation, making sure over the course of time. And I will also share too, if you're doing something like a banana has about 19 to 20 grams of natural sugar in it. So maybe break it in half, have half a banana now with some nuts or some peanut butter or with whatever else you might be eating as a snack to kind of balance out that ratio of carbs to fats to proteins, because your banana doesn't have any other kinds of fats or proteins really in it. And then the other half of the banana, you can eat a little bit later on. So you kind of separated out that ability to break down the natural sugars in there. I hope that answers your question. And thank you for that question. Okay, and then on screen here too, you kind of get where I'm going. So the fiber content of something like an apple, an avocado, or a serving of beans, quite significant. They all have different forms of what other things they carry in them. An apple is going to be a lot more sweet. An avocado is going to feel a little bit more fat filling, right? There's going to be a lot of like smoothness to it. And then your beans are going to contain a lot more fiber and be a little bit more starchy. So again, we talk about variety, diversifying your diet, mixing and matching some things here and there, both in the whole foods and whatever convenience foods or processed foods you might have to include in your diet as well. And just making sure you don't get too much of anything. I mean, if all you did was eat nothing but eggs, that would be a problem. If all you did was eat nothing but beans, that would be a problem. So making sure you mix and match some things. And then naturally occurring sugars, as you can see here on screen as well, just in comparison, we have the avocado, barely any sugar content in that, the beans, a little bit of sugar content in that, and then of course the apple is very juicy and sweet, and so that's going to have naturally occurring sugars in it. Susan asks, do non-sugar sweeteners have the same impact as sugar? It depends. Gastrointestinally, maybe more so. Some people who eat like sugar-free foods, there's a sugar alcohol in that, so it's considered like an artificial sweetener or a non-nutritive sweetener, meaning there's no nutritional value or it doesn't have any calories. So Splenda, Sweet and Low, Equal, those things are going to potentially disrupt your gut because they're an artificial item that your body has some trouble breaking down, so they can cause your tummy to hurt. Whatever, a packet of Sweet and Low in your, or whatever, artificial sugar in your coffee every so often, maybe not a big deal. If you're dealing with diabetes and you're trying to manage that and not take in an extra sugar, that could also help in managing your diabetes. But I also would say, if you're working with a dietitian and your doctor, and you may or may not be on insulin, you can find ways to include natural sugars. You can not be afraid of having an added sugar or a natural sugar and forego the sugar substitute if you are sensitive to that in your gut. Yeah, thank you for your question. By the way, you're all giving me great ideas because as you're asking questions, I'm thinking of other topics that might be useful for you to know in future webinars. All right, here's my PSA. Make sure you're getting checked. I know it's tough to do sometimes. I know some, insurance companies or healthcare professionals, you don't love going to the doctor. My mom has a great fear of needles, and she's got to go every 3 months because she deals with a variety of different conditions where she has to be monitored. So I get it. However, there are some things you can maybe do at home or maybe do at the pharmacy. Like you can check your blood pressure with a cuff. You can take it to the doctors with you just to see if the numbers are somewhat the same, and you can take your blood pressure at home. Obviously, you're not going to stab yourself and give yourself a blood test, but there are, you make sure you go to the doctors to get your annual exam, your screenings, and so on. If you are dealing or managing your blood sugar, your doctor might say you have to do finger sticks. So that's a great way to make sure that you're checking your blood sugar, or you're going to the doctors once a year or twice a year just to get checked. What we usually say is, every year, make sure you're going to your physical exams. If you have an existing condition or are at risk for one, your doctor might ask you, like me with the cholesterol stuff, I might have to go in a little bit more frequently. So again, I understand, issues of concern might be what your health insurance covers, if you do or do not have health insurance. So hopefully you can talk to a caseworker or a social worker who might be able to help you with being able to get what you need, or going to like a free clinic and getting screened every so often. Give me one sec. I just lost my little box here. Okay, I think I answered that live. Yep. Okay, I'm good on the Q&A. All right, so here's where I turn it over to you, right? I gave you a lot of stuff to think about. And of course, I'm never going to ask you to share your private or personal information, but think about what you've been going through, what you might have been told by the doctor. We talked about setting yourself up for goals. We talked about last month, other next steps to help support whatever your lifestyle modifications might be in however you're able to access that, whether it's dietary changes, whether it's physical activity and movement, of course, with my disclaimer, make sure you're cleared by your doctor before you start running on a treadmill or doing anything crazy out there. Reducing alcohol consumption, stopping smoking, setting yourselves up for better sleep habits, because sleep is a huge factor with hormone disruption. So we want to make sure everything's working in tangent together with each other. So think about some things, and if you want to share in the chat, maybe just to, just kind of like hold yourself accountable, or even get something out there that other people might have that might resonate with someone else. If anybody would like to share, what are your next steps? What are you going to do to help support your heart health? And it could be related to the cholesterol stuff that we just talked about today. And Diana, I see your question here. I'm going to answer that. Okay, so servings of grains. Diana asks about servings of grains. So here is where I kind of disagree with what I guess the national recommendations are, because with everything else, it depends. If you are active, if you are on the go, if you are constantly moving, you're going to need more carbohydrates, and grains are a great immediate source of carbohydrates. Your body's going to use it as an immediate source of energy. Eat and off you go. If you are more sedentary, lower level activity levels, or for whatever reason you might be immobilized or confined to some sort of a chair or something that prevents you from moving around a lot, the grains discussion is really more about, how are you utilizing that? So again, taking into account cultural, traditional food ways, making sure we honor and respect how people eat. I would probably say if you do engage in more of a grain-based food meal, rice and beans, pasta, etc., maybe a couple of fistfuls a day, according to what the USDA recommends. They say 6 to 11 servings of grains. I think that is far too many, just because on average, I don't believe we're actually utilizing that. We're not out there tilling the farms anymore, right? We're not moving a ton. So it depends on activity levels. But your body requires a little bit more carbohydrates which can be from a variety of different things. So I hope that kind of answers your question, Diana. So carbohydrates can be from fruits and vegetables, beans, etc. It doesn't have to just be from rice or grain-based foods. So you can get carbohydrates from a variety of different things. But grains as like its own food group, I would say maybe 1 to 2 fistfuls at every meal if you enjoy rice or pasta. Look how sad that is. Look how sad that is. Could you imagine? I'm Italian. I said this already. I can't deal with this much pasta. That's far too little. But every time you sit down to eat, having room on your plate, making space for other things that are going to provide nutritional value to you. So maybe what that means for me is I scooch aside the pasta. I have a handful of it or a fistful of it with some salad or grilled vegetables and a piece of salmon or whatever other things might constitute a meal for me. And then if I feel like going back for seconds, then that's okay. I would probably say just avoid having the grains take over the majority of your plate. Is anyone out there crying or mad at me right now for saying that? I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. I know that's just my opinion, but it's also my expert opinion. Okay, Mr. Moore wants to know if there's a particular kind of beans for fiber. Is there a difference? Um, Mr. Moore, fiber is kind of fiber. It's just a matter of the quantity of it. So you're not wrong in asking, like, I don't have the ability to do it. I have to do kind of like a nutritional analysis side by side, but gram for gram, kidney beans, pinto beans, black beans, I think are higher in fiber than I want to say something like peas and like avocado, right? So avocado is not necessarily a legume family, but as part of your plant-based foods, even things like lettuce and broccoli have less fiber gram for gram, serving for serving than beans do. So you're fine with mixing it up. If you like black beans, do black beans. If you want to mix it up and do chickpeas, that's fine too, right? It's all about taste preference and versatility. Like in my brain, I use pinto, red, or kidney beans for a very specific reason, more for like chili based things. And then I'll use something like black beans when I'm doing uh Mexican fish tacos, things like that. I use chickpeas when I'm doing hummus because that's where hummus technically comes from blended up chickpeas. So yeah, so it's just a matter of your preference of food. It's hard to get to that 28 or 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day without giving you some tummy disruption. So whatever you are eating as far as your beans are concerned, make sure you're also staying hydrated with fluids to get that fiber on its way out. You don't want it stopping you up. Susan, that could also depend too. So if you are peeling anything, right? This is a good question. The question is, do you lose the fiber benefit with chickpeas in the form of hummus? So if you are peeling the skin off of anything, people who juice, right? If you're peeling, well, obviously you would peel the skin off like a pineapple. You're not going to eat the skin off of a peel off of a banana. So you would be peeling where the fiber is. So same thing goes kind of with the beans and the chickpeas. With chickpeas in particular, you could peel off that little papery outside of it, but it still has a ton of fiber in it. So the fiber is contained within the plant cell walls. And in the case of a bean or a chickpea, it's inside already. Same thing with corn. Corn is technically a whole grain and is very, well, it's high-ish in fiber. So even if you're doing something like popcorn, you're still getting the benefits of fiber in that because you haven't completely destroyed the plant cell of where the fiber is containing. So this is kind of like a biological or a botanical discussion in that sense. If you peel the skin off of a potato, there's still fiber in the potato, but there's less fiber now that you peeled the skin off of it. If you peel the skin off of an apple, same thing. It's a little bit more concentrated in sugar, less fiber. The fiber is going to be contained in the apple. So you're better off eating the peels of things. In the case of something like chickpeas or beans, no, not necessarily. Unless like you liquefy whatever you're pureeing and you completely get rid of all of the, mushy textured stuff, the fibrous content, and you throw that away, then you would be losing the fiber for that. Thank you for your questions. I love all of this. This is fascinating. Okay, let's take a look. Did anybody want to share any of your next steps, your goals, things that you might want to do if even, if you're in your own live session or in your mind, if you want to kind of make a promise to yourself for the next 30 days or so, maybe before I come back again. I'm gonna see. So for my end, all right, I gotta share with you. I got a lot of stress going on. Like we've talked about stress before, and I'm probably buzzing at like an 8 out of 10 right now. So I mentioned other factors that can potentially put my heart at risk. I have to be very mindful right now. I'm saying this out loud to all of you. This is going to be my next step. I have to be very mindful of how much work I'm taking on, not let it take over a good portion of my day. I mentioned to Matthew before we started going live here, as soon as we're done, I have another webinar that I'm doing, but then as soon as that's over, I am going for a walk. I'm going outside for at least 45 minutes, if not an hour. I canceled my 2 o'clock appointment and I'm just going to treat myself to the self-care because I can't be all up in my brain anymore. I can tell I'm probably going to have some heart issues if I keep this up. So please be kind to yourselves. Do whatever you need to do, whatever you are able to do to manage that. Diana, I don't know. I can't say for sure off the top of my head. I could look it up, but I don't know if anybody's actually ventured to eat a banana peel. So I don't know if it's something that exists. Like an apple, when we say the fiber content of an apple, we include the peel in that. And then if you take it off, I'm gonna say it's probably maybe I don't know if I had guessed maybe 3 grams, not a ton. I'm gonna look it up right now. Banana fiber content. And in the case of a banana, I'm gonna assume they're not including the peel in that because it's pretty rare that people do that. Okay, so one medium banana contains 3 grams of dietary fiber. So that does not include the peel. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, are you willing to, are you asking because you want to eat the peel? I don't find that very tasteful, but maybe in like a grilled version, I don't think, I think you can eat it. I don't think it's like poisonous or anything like that. Okay. Yeah, it's possible. I don't think it's poison. Like, please don't do anything. Let's see. Are banana peels poisonous? Listen, this is what Google's for. Um, Edible. I'm just fact checking for all of you right now. Yes. Yes, it's tough and bitter, but it's possible that you could eat the banana peels if you want to. Just depends on how I guess you're cooking them or eating them raw. I eat lemon whole. I eat orange whole. I eat the peels and everything. I have no problem with the like the tartness of it. Yeah, there you go. But I don't know exactly how many grams of fiber just the peel contains. Okay, I answered that live. Let's see. Anybody else put anything in the chat? All right, my friends, I'm going to wrap this up just by asking, do you have any other questions? And if you found this beneficial, you can give me a little thumbs up or share with me anything else that you might be curious about, and I'll be sure to include that in one of the future webinars that we have. I love all these little thumbs up coming in. I'm good. I'm good for another couple of minutes if anybody has any other questions. But while you're thinking of stuff to add, I will tease next month's discussion. It is National Nutrition Month. Dietitians are agog over this. We love talking about nutrition, so we love that we have a whole month that we can do it. And in the dietetics world, we have themes every year. So National Nutrition Month's theme for this year is called Beyond the Table. So next month, I'll be talking about sustainable factors when it comes to eating. What's farm to table mean? What is organic versus non-organic? So I'm going to have a conversation about things like that. Food waste, things like that, to composting. If you're in New York City, you might be aware of some compost issues going on right now. Funding is being taken away from our composting, so we're very sad about that. Ruth, you are very welcome. And Susan, there you go. Okay, cool, cool. Exercise. So exercise, when you're talking about physical activity and however you define movement, whether that's a fast walk or running on a treadmill or playing basketball or going swimming, or even just standing up and moving around through the day, Susan, exercise, physical activity gets the blood and the oxygen flowing. It helps with all of those cellular functions. So we mentioned before, cholesterol is like a waxy substance. If you're not doing the proper things, if you are adding more to your diet that contains cholesterol, if you're decreasing the amount of movement, it gets stuck in those arteries. And when we move around and we get the blood and the oxygen flowing, we help kind of flush that out. Same thing goes with diabetes, just a side note. One of the best things you can do after a meal, if you're dealing with blood glucose issues, is get up and move around for 5 minutes. Go take a walk. It gets the blood out. It gets everything that needs to go into the cells. It helps with intaking the breakdown of whatever the mechanisms are. In the case of diabetes, it gets the insulin into where it needs to go. You're very welcome. I'm glad that you found this helpful. Thank you, everybody. I'm excited to see all of you next month. I wish you all the best. Eat well and be well, my friends. Thanks so much.
I'm on mute. Sorry. So thank you, Dina. That was excellent as
Thank you.
always. And we'll see if any more questions come here just before we end. We're going to have a short presentation from Lenora Walker on Circle of Care. So Lenora will wait for you. I would just mention in the meantime that we did just recently have a presentation on older adults and alcohol. And that will be up on our YouTube page in the near future. So that's definitely something to take a look at. So I know that came up in today's discussion. And Lenora, I think if you're ready, we're ready to let you do it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Dana, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lenora Walker, and I'm a care consultant for PSS Kinship Caregivers Program. Our program is stationed in the Grandparent Family Apartment Building, which is in the Bronx. The building is owned by PSS and Westside Federation for Senior Housing. It is the first building ever built for only kinship caregivers and their families back in 2005. The Grandparent Family Apartment provides a safe, affordable housing with a support system that enables grandparents raising grandchildren to reach their full potential and to gain tools that are essential for their success. Our kinship caregivers are seniors caring for children who are not biologically their own, but are blood related. So, for an example, it could be a grandmother, grandfather, an aunt, an uncle, a sibling, or a cousin, for an example. The services provided to support kinship families are our youth and young adult services. PSS offer an after-school and summer program, workshops, and support groups for children ages 6 to 18 years old. PSS also assists with educational support, college information, and job readiness. The goal for the program is to make a difference in the lives of kinship youth and their young adults by providing enrichment, guidance, and support to inspire them to reach their goals. For our caregivers, we do provide on-site kinship caregivers. On our site, we do provide we are professionally staffed with a wide variety of services for both residents and for the kinships that's in our community. So we do have support groups, health and wellness trainings, social activities. We have one-on-one family counseling, respite service, supplemental services, and all of our services are free. So if you are someone that you know that is interested in any of our service, please call our toll-free caregivers hotline, and that is at 866-665-1713, or visit our website at psscaregivers.org. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and have an awesome day.
So Lenora, maybe you want to post that in the chat just
I
so
certainly
people
will.
can see it.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Lenora. So that brings us near the end of our program for today. So thank you again, everybody. And I invite you to keep looking at the PSS events page. We have an event coming up next week on the 14th, Valentine's Day, on fall prevention, and lots of other events throughout February and March and going forward, well into April and May. So you'll see events listed that far ahead. And we'll let Lenora post that information in the chat, so I'll leave the room open. Dina, did you want to say anything else? You're good? Okay, that's good.
Just
All
wanted to
right.
say thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you again. And we'll see you all next month. And I'll leave this open just so Lenora can post that information in the chat.